Welcome back to the Diver Guide channel, and today we're talking about back 2.5 tuck. This is a big dive, and we've got a lot to cover with it, so bear with me as we go through some of the more basic stuff, but we'll get to some more advanced ideas on this dive towards the middle and the end of the video, so skip ahead if you just want to get to that stuff. I know a lot of people watching this will just be doing this for the first time, so I want to make sure that you guys have the best understanding of what goes into the prep for this, and then also how to make this dive the best it can be. If you're new to this channel, I make these videos because I wish I had these when I was younger, and I know a lot of people are getting good value out of them, so I keep making them. If you get value out of it, please subscribe, please tell all your dive friends about it, tell your coaches. I'm trying to grow the channel and make this into the best resource possible for anybody who needs coaching. With that said, let's get into it. So how do you know you're ready to do this dive? You should be pretty good at coming out of a back 1.5 tuck on 1 meter and on 3 meter. If you aren't comfortable doing a back 1.5 on 3 meter, I would say you probably shouldn't be trying back 2.5, but there are definitely exceptions to the rules. With that said, if you have a very strong kick out on your back 1.5 on 1 meter and you're finishing it pretty high, you know exactly where you are, that's great for spotting. Additionally, you're going to want to be very good at a back double on 1 meter as well. I don't think any coach would let you take it up without doing a good back double, but a good back double has a couple things that you should look for. It's going to have great balance on the takeoff, not sitting back too far, not standing up too much either, because you don't want to be too close to the board as you come around for that last flip when you're kicking out. A lot of people will whip their head back to get the momentum started for this dive, and that's a mistake. If you do that on 3 meter, you're going to fly back and it will end up being kind of whippy on the entry. The more you sit on a back, the easier it is for your legs to whip over on the entry. And that's why this takeoff is so incredibly important. And I talk about this in a lot of other videos about the proper mechanics for a back or even reverse takeoff. You have to be able to get the arms through pretty smoothly, and you have to use the hips to get into a nice C position or banana position, whatever your coach might call it, on this takeoff. You should be looking into the tuck pretty well, and you should know where you are as you do your back doubles. Basically, that means you should see the water twice or you should see the board twice as you do your flips. That way you know when to come out. And it's not just based off of feel. You have both a feel for the flip and the visual cues for the flip. Once you're consistently seeing the spots and your coach thinks that you're ready, you just gotta take some deep breaths and you have to go for it. It's usually a bigger mental struggle than a physical struggle at that point, but the biggest tip that I can tell you is just to be patient on the takeoff. Most people, when they go to do this for the first time, will rush their arm circle and they'll lean back too much, which honestly is okay for the first couple that you do because you're getting it off the board and you're gonna have a call, so you have that backup for you. But the more you can force yourself to relax and really try to pretend like it's a back double on 1 meter, the better off you'll be. And if you have bubbles available, don't be afraid to use them. The goal with your optional starts is to really try and make it feel like the lead up. Once you get to that point where the optional feels like the lead up, then you know you're 100% comfortable with the dive. But that just takes time because you're higher up. It's usually more nerve-wracking and it's more flips, so there's more opportunity to miss a spot or to mess up on your come out or literally anything. Alright, so now let's get into some more advanced stuff. Pay attention to the differences you see between somebody who's just been doing this dive for like a year or two compared to somebody who is maybe doing this dive as a drill for like back 2.5 pike or back 3.5 or something like that. And you'll notice that the timing on the arm circle is a little bit different. You'll notice that the people in the beginning of this dive are falling back still. They're not getting the full force from the board because they're not staying on top of the board long enough. And they're obviously finishing it low, which means they don't have enough time for a really strong, beautiful come out and lengthening for the entry. And that's happening to this person's back 2.5. You can see as they peak at the top of that last oscillation, their arms start moving pretty early, and then they connect with their shoulders as they come up for that final stand-up, which means that they're going to fall back. Basically, anytime that you move your arms too early, it's going to initiate your C position too early as well. And if the board is still down when you're hitting that C position, you're going to fall back. And that's why you see a lot of pro divers wait a lot longer to start their arm circle before they stand up. They stay over the board as much as possible because they know they want to leverage the board as much as possible, as well as their strength, because they're also phenomenally strong. But they want to use the board because the board is so much stronger than they are. Because she falls back, her legs have to travel a lot further to get up to her upper body into the tuck, which usually leaves somebody in a bigger position, which she's not in the worst position in the air, which will make you flip slower. She still finishes the dive and she gets out in time for an entry, but she doesn't have a lot of time and she has to really rush to get her hands back, which means that she's not really able to lock out all the way. Now take a look at this person. They're doing it as a drill, so they're double bouncing, which is totally fine. And this might actually be a great way for you to give yourself a little bit extra time in the air so that you can practice a nicer come out. That usually helps you relax in the air, and then you can bring that experience to a normal takeoff. But anyways, she gets her arms up pretty well, but you can see she's still falling back a good amount. Regardless, she's still able to bring her legs up in front, but she's lifting them up a little early. You'd want to let yourself extend up a little bit longer so that the board comes up higher and pushes you up into the air better. She is double bouncing, so that might be a little bit harder, but she still gets into a great tuck. She looks like she's spotting pretty well, and then she still has that rushed out. So this person's probably in the in-between phase where they're not quite finishing it high enough to get that strong legs first out and really show off the leg lines, but they don't really need to punch for the water super fast either. And that's what happens on these dives. You're going to have these transition periods where you can perform this dive at a higher level, but your habits keep you in that lower level where you're punching for the water. You're basically acting like you don't have as much time as you do, just because you've gotten stronger or your technique has gotten better. And that's something that you have to continuously realize and break through, either using drills or just mental fortitude to recreate habits for these dives. Now, this is a great example of somebody who's finishing it up a little bit higher and they're still falling back a little bit, because balance on the board is one of the hardest things to get. You can see that this person still starts their arm circle on their way up, which, as we've already talked about, is going to make them sit a little bit too much and fall back, which you can see right there. The hips are no longer over the board, and that just means that the board's going to shoot you out, like we've talked about. They still have a great connection. They get into a great tuck, and they've gotten to the point where they can actually kick for the board and look back pretty well. They just get a little bit loose and they throw their head back too much on the entry. When it comes to spotting, it's just one of those things that you have to practice and you have to do in order to get better at it. As you get better and better at the dive, your spots will change slightly, but for the most part, you're going to be kicking at the board, which makes this dive a lot easier than reverse 2.5 because you have something to literally kick at. As you come around for that second flip, it's really nice to look for the water and then track with your eyes up to the board. And based on how long it took you to get from one flip to the next, you should know how to angle your kick to line up for the entry really well. It's always nice to just have consistent starts, but that's not always realistic. You're going to have some starts that really pop off. You're going to get a great hip drive and you're going to flip really quick. So you have to come out and kick stronger at the board a little bit earlier. But you're also going to have some where you accidentally sit too much. You're not going to get as much force from the board, and you're going to have to wait a little bit longer and kick up a little bit higher than the board. So making those adjustments is just something that you have to learn through experience. But make sure that you're constantly thinking about that, because that's how you get better. And look, even the pros that are doing back 3.5 don't have it all figured out perfect. They suffer a lot of the times from the same stuff that you might be suffering from on your back 2.5 or even back 1.5. So take this with a grain of salt, because this is literally the best in the world doing this. But it can give us inspiration for what you're trying to accomplish. He's long and extended for that final press. He drives down, and his arms start moving as he's going down into the squat. But look at how much his chest is staying over the board. He's bending really deep into the squat, which is different than a lot of other divers that you've seen so far. They're not getting as deep of a squat, either because they're unstable when they get down that low, or maybe they're not quite strong enough yet. But this is something to think about as you get better and better at back 2.5. And his body is staying over the board all the way through to the extension. His hips are still on top of the board into that C position, and he ends up in a really good location. So this lets you know that the balance on this takeoff is pretty great. And he doesn't start lifting his legs up until the board is just about flat again. And when that happens, he explodes up into that tuck. His knees come up quick, his arms go to meet them, and he pulls in for that tuck as quick as he can, because he knows the sooner he gets into that tuck, the faster he'll flip. But that only happens once you finish the extension. You have to finish the extension, let the board push you, and then it's about how fast you can get into that tuck. But think about this come out. The knees extend, and the amount of time it takes him to go from tuck to knees extended is like a millisecond. That's how you stop the rotation, and that's how you show off the leg lines that you're going to be judged on for this entry. Once you get that takeoff under control and your spotting is decent, you're going to feel more confident to commit to that come out, and that's half the battle right there. The stronger you kick and the more consistently you just kick strong, the better your entries will be. Because if you kick soft, then your entry will be soft. If you get into the habit of a strong kick, even if you're going short or over or straight up and down, your entry will be better because you're tight. And I know the best way to learn about this dive is by doing it. So when you're ready, give it a send, and then think about the more advanced things later on. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.